Our next testimony is going to come from Jim Myrick. Jim is currently one of my major heroes. God's got a funny sense of humor. My earthly boss used to say, God works in mysterious ways, but sometimes they send mischievous, And I had to give up driving, that's a long story. And Jim gets me from one place to another most days. So Jim,
thank you, sir.
Let's hear it.
And I am a SLAA guy, and I feel a little awkward with children here, and so I'm going to kind of use some code words or whatever I can get. I don't know how to use it. I grew up, well, let's see, I was born to a unwed mother in the Bay Area of California. And there were not, fortunately for me, easy abortions at that time. I imagine that would have been an option. As far as I know, she's not a believer, and she put me up for adoption. So I was adopted by a Christian man and woman who honestly believed in Jesus, and they were not two-faced people. They took me to church on Sunday, morning and night, Wednesday night, youth group, church camp, everything. And they, prayed and read their Bible and watched Christian programming and turned off beer advertisements. And, it was, I was not abused. I was not treated badly. I have no excuse for turning out crooked. But as a young teenager, I started acting out in an SLAA way. And I would go to church, and I accepted the Lord as a little kid. But I'd look at everybody's outsides and compare them to my insides, and I was coming up way short. And I was thinking, did I really, did I accept the Lord? What's going on? Why do they look so good? And I feel, I got all this craziness going on in my life. And so I probably accepted the Lord, 100 times or something. And, finished up. Well, let's see. What happened was, my dad was sick. His auto supply was closed. I was working at a gas station, and I had this car, and I was drag racing it. And I blew the motor up, and I didn't have any money. And so I remembered that this guy had come to the high school talking about the Army. And you go in there, and 20 years later, you could retire. And I was like, what? That's crazy, So I was broke, my car was blown up, I didn't have a job. Well, I had got fired from the gas station for being a knucklehead too. So I went in the Army, and I was in the Army, but I went to Korea. Let's just say that I acted out in an SA and an SLAA way. I smoked cigarettes, I drank some beer, booze, hard liquor, smoked some dope, whatever. But, I was not, none of that stuff was really, it was not difficult for me to give it up or anything like that. It just was not a big deal. But the other stuff, when I would be like, well, let me tell you what happened. So I met this girl at a Christian youth activity. And she's half Filipino, and she's athletic, and she's really good, she's curvy. Let's say she's curvy, you know what I'm saying? And we had a good time, and she was funny, and we laughed a lot. We told a lot of jokes and went out and tore up everything. And I said, she's fun. I should marry her. So I did. And now my cousin, he was a youth pastor, and he married us. He was working up there. He was the pastor of the youth group up there in around Washington. And I remember, you know, we were in the back, like there was a room back there, right before I was going to get married, you know, and he pulled out his car keys and he said, just take these keys, take my car, and go. And I said, no, that's not a good idea. I didn't do it. I should have took them keys. But anyway, what I thought was, you know, I got this, I didn't know it was an addiction. I just thought I was a sinner, you know what I'm saying? Because I grew up in the church. And I figured, you know, well, now I got a wife. So no problem. That takes care of that problem. It's going to be, you know, I'll be good. Everything will be wonderful. And it was okay for a while. And then I started, you know, getting crazy. And I'd go to, you know, I'd pretend I was going somewhere, but I'd go like some XXX movie theater. I mean, back in them days, you didn't just have this telephone, see? You know, you had to, you know, go places to do bad stuff. So, you know, I went down there with these old weirdos, and as I was going down there, I could feel the blood, the freaking adrenaline, you know, rushing through my veins. I mean, you probably don't have the same kind of addiction that I did, but I was pretty crazy. So anyway, I'd go in these old, you know, secondhand bookstores and go through piles of freaking old magazines and stuff. Man, the lady who worked there must have thought I was a weirdo, and I was. You know? So, I was down in Panama in the Army. I'll fast forward. And had a different wife. Now, this time my wife, you know, I won't even go into what caused the breakup of the first marriage, but it was crazy. But anyhow, so this wife I was really totally in love with, and she was gorgeous. You know what I'm saying? So I knew that this was like a different kind of marriage. You know? This time, this was real, because that first one, you know, we were just having a good time, and she was good looking. So I understood why that one didn't work out. It was just a bad decision, you know what I'm saying? But now, the one that I really loved her, and she was gorgeous, like the best looking woman ever. This time I was, you know, it wasn't going to be no problem, you know what I'm saying? Well, it was good for a while. And then that thing raised its ugly head again. And it was like a whole different deal. It was like the two things were like totally separate. The deal, you know, what's going on with my wife, and then this other deal over here, that was like I don't know what it was, but it was a bad deal. And so what happened was, I kept thinking about this verse that I heard when I was a kid. It said, "Seek and ye shall find." And I didn't know what it meant. And I said, what does that mean, you know? I mean, I understood. I thought Jesus is the answer to this problem. But I didn't know, how do you get Jesus, like, inside of you with, like, power? And then, like, you can do stuff that you're supposed to do and not do stuff that you ain't supposed to do. How do you do that? So there was this church, and we were kind of going off and on to it in the Canal Zone, or what used to be the Canal Zone. And I decided, if the church is open, I'm going to be there. If they're cutting grass, if they're tearing down a wall, if it's a meeting, if it's a Bible study, if it's whatever it is, I'm going to be in there. So I started going. And there was this very simple black woman, Panamanian woman, teaching a Bible study in there. And I don't remember everything she was teaching, but what I remembered was, I said to myself, whatever she's got with the Lord, that's how I want it. I want what she's got. So, one day, her husband, he invited me to this Bible study. And, you know, and he was working with this ministry called Campus Crusade for Christ. And I wasn't a college student, but he invited me. And I said, well, you know, my policy was if it's got something to do with the Lord, with the church, I'm going. You know, I'm going to be there. So I went. And we were in these Bible studies. And then he started like asking me like questions. Like questions that nobody ever asked me before. Like, are you doing X? SLAASA activity. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody ever talked about none of that stuff with me that was Christian. You know what I'm saying? So he was asking, he was like a sponsor, but I didn't know nothing about sponsors. I didn't know nothing about rigorous honesty. So I didn't know like that was part of recovery. I didn't know that. So he's asking me these questions. So one day we were on this retreat, and we were studying the Bible. We're cooking chow, praying, and then one day we were out on this bluff by the ocean. Well, first we were doing like Greco-Roman wrestling or something, and I cheated and knocked a couple guys out of the circle. It was great. But then, so we were on this bluff overlooking the ocean, and we were all standing around, I don't know, we're praying or something, and then he says, I'm going to do something. And we're looking at each other like, what's he, I don't know, what's this guy going to do? I don't know. And so, but I knew the guy. And he I'd go into, he lived in this neighborhood where like the people that built the canal that were from the islands lived. So he was like, and that was his ancestry up there. So I'd go in there to pick him up or something, or go to his house, do something for him, or whatever it was. And he'd be walking outside with his two littlest kids, one in each hand, walking. And his other two kids, a little bit older, riding their bicycle. And, it's just like a real freaking, what a dad's supposed to be, I wasn't a dad. I don't know if I was a dad yet or not. I think I was. But, he always set an example in everything, this dude. So he said, we're standing on this bluff in a circle. And he said, I'm going to do something. We didn't know what he was going to do. So he got in the center of the circle, got down on his knees, and he says, in a simple prayer, he says, Father, I dedicate myself to these men. And I fell down on the ground, about 30 gallons of snot came out of me. I couldn't, why would this guy dedicate himself to me? I was like, it was like they were showing me a picture of Jesus. I don't know, it maybe doesn't seem like a picture of Jesus to you, but it did to me. I said, I don't deserve this. I ain't nobody, And for 6 years after that, I didn't act out. I didn't know I was in sort of like recovery. I had a sponsor. I was being rigorously honest, So I finished up my time in the Army, did 21 years, and I said, what am I going to do? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So I won't even go into the crazy story about how I decided to go. But we applied to be missionaries of Campus Crusade, and they said, yeah, come on. So I go out on the mission field with my wife. She's from Panama. We went to her hometown, about 7 hours away from the main city, Panama City. And I didn't have no sponsor. I didn't have no, big rigorous honesty. We're out there. I was trying to do the Lord's work. I left making money and getting a faster car and a bigger house or whatever to go out there and be a missionary. So then I come down with cancer on the mission field. And, I tried to take it well or whatever, but it was like a hard pill to swallow. You leave the fast car, you go to do the Lord's work. I didn't understand, really about it. That I need to be like plugged into Jesus, and I thought I was. I didn't really know I wasn't, but I realize now that I was trying to do the Lord's work on my own power. I don't know why I'm looking at you so much. I'm sorry about that. I love you, brother. I love you. That's the real deal right there. I'm like a joke, but anyway. So I ended up messing around with a woman that wasn't my wife down there. And the Panamanian said, that could happen to anybody, brother. We love you. But the folks that was in charge up in the States, they said, pack your bags. You're going to a counseling center with your whole family, and we're going to see what happens. To make a long story short, I was there for 3 months. We were in counseling. Came to some very nice Campus Crusade people over here that welcomed us, and we ended up in counseling in this very church with one of the guys that founded AliveAgain, Chuck Dixon. And he was my marriage counselor, and he suggested, well, you know, how did it work? Well, we were being counseled, and then at some point we went up to Orlando where our I don't know, I got to check my watch here. I don't want to go over too much here. Hold on a second. I don't want Daniel to give me no dirty looks. Hold on. I think I'm almost, okay, so, okay, I'm hurrying. No. Daniel. So, there's a paper airplane on top of that light. But, so, Campus Crusade says they didn't like some answers I was given to some questions about how I was doing in my marriage and how I was doing with, what's going on, Dan?
You got plenty of time.
Oh, do I? Okay. So how was I doing with, you know, my SA and SLAA internet-related activities, let's say, okay? And they didn't like the answer. So I said, I think you're going to have to tender your resignation. And I says, okay, all right. So I was driving back to Miami, and I was thinking, well, you know, I guess I'll be like a UPS driver or something. I guess I'll get a bigger car and get a faster house or opposite or something like that. And make money, you know, whatever. So Chuck Dixon calls me on the phone. He says, come on, let's have breakfast, you know, Saturday morning. So we had breakfast. And I thought he was just wanting to give me a shoulder to cry. So he says, why don't you come be a missionary with AliveAgain? And I says, well, let me talk to my wife about it. So I says to my wife, you know, what choice do we have? You know, if I want to do something for the Lord, everybody else is going to say, well, why'd you leave Campus Crusade? And then, you know, they ain't gonna want me, you know. So these guys, they want me because I'm screwed up. You know? So I says, okay, let's do it. So then we had this lunch with Russell, Woody, and Chuck at Miss Saigon Bistro when it used to be there. And so I was telling Russ, I remember I was in there, I was telling Russell, you know, there was this chemistry with this girl, you know, but man, I only fell with her, you know, actually physically into a, you know, relationship with her like 4 times. And he's like, wow, 4 times. He said, Jim, most guys are going to take it at least 7 times. So he says, you know what you need to do? He says, you need to come up with, tonight I'm going to go to a meeting, and you need to write up to see what we do, so we can see about whether, you know, you want to be a missionary, or we want you to be a missionary. So I wrote up, I'm standing in the 4th Dimension Club. I'm standing in the back, standing room only. Russell's doing one of the step series. And for some reason I'm thinking, what am I doing in here with all these alcoholics? And I don't know why, but I was thinking I was like better than an alcoholic or something. I don't know what that was all about. So I'm standing there, and then he started talking. He said, well, we felt isolated. We had negative beliefs about ourselves, which had to be medicated. And what we really always wanted deep down inside were spiritual relationships with people. And I was thinking, so you mean like when I was going through the internet, like I had to see like every freaking picture, like every one of them. And what I really wanted was spiritual relationships with people. And the whole time he's talking, I'm thinking, yeah, if you take alcohol out, that's like me. Like you can like put sex in there, that's me. The whole time. And then we're driving back that night, he says, we got this meeting on Saturday morning, and I think you should go. That was Thursday. So Friday night I'm thinking, what am I gonna say, you know? I mean, they're gonna say, my name's Fred and I'm an alcoholic. My name's Joe and I'm an addict. And everybody's gonna say, hey Joe, hey Fred. What am I gonna say? I'm gonna say, like, my name's Jim, I was a missionary on the mission field and I was unfaithful to my wife. And then I heard his voice said at the meeting. So I went to sleep. I says, okay, now that's from the Lord right there. So I went to sleep. I went to the meeting, and I'm thinking, there's a bunch of these dudes that got tattoos, they got muscles. Looks like some kind of professional sports team. Dice, who's going to play right here, was one of them. And I'm having second thoughts. And then they read out the Asbill season. It said something about, have you always been honest about your sexual or romantic or something like that, relationships? And I've listened to the Asbill season. I've heard it read so many times. I never heard anything else sexual in that book at all. But on that morning, when they read that, the Lord says to me, do what I told you. Say you are what I said you are. So everybody's like, I'm Fred, I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Fred. I'm Joe, I'm an hey, Joe. And it's coming around to me, It's not like my name's Jim when I was sexy. Hey, Jim. All of a sudden, like in a split second, I went from isolation, I was almost, I didn't care if I was in 12,000 people. I was a crooked person that the Lord somehow, he couldn't straighten it out. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't figure it out. And then all of a sudden, I get isolated. Because, you're just another guy that has some kind of problem, And so I ain't done this thing perfect, because you got to do your before, what happened, and after, right? Okay, so I ain't been perfect at this. All I can tell you is I have not been physically having a physical sexual relationship with a woman that ain't my wife since I left Panama. Amen. Now, I ain't been perfect. My wife knows how imperfect I've been and what I've been imperfect about. But listen to me. I'll tell you something. I would, in every book, there's a bunch of dudes knows me here. I would argue with you about just about anything. Doctrine, whether it was politics, I would argue. I was, arrogant and, listen, the Lord's changed me. And you know it's true. It is true. Now, I ain't perfect yet. But listen, I ain't the same man I used to be. Thank you for letting me share.